Well, Lisa, thank you so much for letting us come in. That was just such a joy to be in your classroom. And, you know, it takes a lot of courage to let 12 administrators come in your class and be there. And you were courageous. Your kids were awesome. So pass that on to them.
I will,
We
definitely. I thought
that.
they did a fantastic job.
Oh, they were.
With that many people watching them in the room,
They were
did
wonderful.
a very good job.
And tell them we appreciate it.
I will.
And know that all of these people are here to watch me.
Okay.
They're not here to watch you.
Okay.
They're going to watch me because we're all kind of together learning to do this professional dialogue. And so if you see them making notes, they're making notes about to give me feedback on my role.
Okay.
So just kind of
Thank you.
forget they're
Okay.
there and we'll have
I can do that.
this
I can do that.
conversation.
Sure.
So I guess my first question for you is, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the worst lesson you've ever taught, 10 being the best, where does this lesson fall?
I think I would give this lesson about a 7.
A 7? And why? What?
To me, it was the engagement of my students and the conversations that I was hearing them have as I was facilitating that process. I was very pleased with what they were doing, the product they were creating, and what they were conversing about. And so a 5 to me is kind of middle of the road. I would bump it up a couple of notches and say it was a little better than middle of the road for those reasons.
All right. Excellent. All right. So, you know, I told you in our pre-conference that really when we went in there, we were looking through the lens of this rigor rubric. So that's what's going to really guide our conversation today.
Okay.
So looking at the thoughtful work section of the rubric, just kind of take a look at that and thinking about the work your students were doing, where would you place this lesson in terms of thoughtful work?
Looking at the rubric here, I would, let me just look at the second bullet.
Yeah.
Can I say 2.5?
Absolutely.
Or do you want me to give it to you or 3?
You think
I
you
feel
were
like
right
I'm-
between 2 and 3?
And I'll
and
tell
talk
you,
about that.
I'll
Talk
tell you
about
why.
Good.
The first bullet that says students demonstrate their learning that come by completing tasks that require comprehension to the ability to analyze, synthesize, and evaluate. I feel like I was pushing them in that direction with the developed by they were analyzing the photo and crafting their own questions with the I wonder statements. They were, so there was a level of an analysis there. And when they were flagging and highlighting the key details in order to gain their new understanding about the causes of the water pollution, to me that was a synthesizing because the information wasn't right there in the text. It was something that they had to read and think about, here are the things that I've read about, now how does that help me understand this text-based question better? To me that's a level of synthesis. However, when it says here, the opportunities for students to demonstrate through learning tasks that require them to apply knowledge and comprehend content, part of me, the difference in that and the other one is responding to content through inquiry and interpretation. I don't think I had them to that level of inquiry and interpretation. I would say the lesson today is setting them up for that. The more research we do and getting ready for that infographic that they're creating. So that's why I'm kind of higher on that first bullet, a little bit lower on that second bullet. I just think we're in between the emerging and the developed areas.
Definitely, I see that too. So, in terms of, you're talking about where you're headed next, and looking at where you're headed, what will it take, and do you see a way to take it and maybe even push it up to the next level? What would that look like if we're looking at the next level being students develop their own learning tasks and tasks that allow students to assess their own learning? What would that look like?
So what I'm picturing right now is, and I'm just thinking, we analyze those 4 different those rubrics, those infographics today. And so the next step of that process is little more research, because we looked at informational text. I want to give them different variety of informational text that they can read. But then taking that information, what they know about water pollution and how we impact that, taking that plus the infographic, or we've done other types of presenting presentation tools, I guess, we've used in class. So when it comes to that final product, which will be in the next few days, I see more of, they have all the research. They have what they, in their mind, here's what I've learned about water pollution and how we impact that. Now I want to design my own product or process to share that with other people. And
Okay.
so I see that as they're developing their own learning task that's going to stretch their creativity in that manner.
So it's what I hear you saying, because what I heard you tell them today is that they were gonna take what they did and design an infographic. Do I hear you saying that now as you look at this, you're thinking maybe give them some choice?
Yes,
as well?
oh,
Okay.
absolutely, yeah, definitely after today's lesson, and then really looking at the rubric. It doesn't have to be an infographic.
Agreed.
It can be anything, because the goal's not the tool, the goal is the information that they've gained from the research they've experienced, from the reading they've done. And so the goal then is, I don't care what way you present it, it's just that, what's your takeaway from your understanding of water pollution
Wonderful.
and how we impact that?
Absolutely.
Yes.
It'll be interesting to see what you get.
Oh, yeah, you
I
might be
wanna-
invited.
I
You might
want
be invited. I'm
to see
sure
them.
the
I want
students
to
would
see
love
them.
to have you in there.
Definitely. What about this piece? Once they've done that, is there a way for them to assess their own learning and do that piece to there? What would that look like?
And Denise, you
with
know
that?
that that's not one of my strong suits. That's something I need extra support in, is really getting students to that point of self-assessing. Now, I tend to use rubrics, some, but not as intentional as I would like to use those. I think that would be one way they can assess their own learning and the learning of their peers, is if whatever presentation or infographic or anything that they use to present this information, whatever they use, if there was a way that, that I could just be one of many eyes that is assessing. I'm assessing my own work as a learner, Miss Brady's assessing it as another view, a peer is assessing it as another view, so that then that will grow them for the next time we have this going on with the choices, the different choices.
That's a great plan. I actually read an article in Ed Leadership about reciprocal feedback, students
Oh.
giving each other feedback, and it included like some sentence frames for that.
Yes.
Would you be interested?
I would
in
love
having
that.
That might be something
Absolutely.
for you to
I would like to make
consider
that a
as
goal.
they
Absolutely.
as they do that. Excellent.
Perfect, yes.
All right. So let's take a look at high-level questioning.
Okay.
Thinking about the questioning that happened and the
Okay.
thinking that went behind it,
Mhm.
and the rubric. Where did you feel this lesson fell in terms of high-level questioning?
All right. Denise, I have to kind of go, I keep going back and forth with this one too, just because there were moments where I feel like they were generating questions about the content that demonstrated independent thinking. I'm not sure it was rigorous, but rigorous in the eyes of the child, because when they were analyzing that photo that I see, I think I wonder, the I wonder part truly is about, they're crafting their own questions. And all of those questions, when they were sharing those with their stand-up, hand-up buddies, and I was listening in, those questions were all thought-provoking, and they weren't just basic knowledge level. But that was one opportunity for that. I wouldn't say that that was a consistent use of that kind of questioning, but they did craft their own questions there. They generated their own. But when I go back to the emerging, students respond to questions that demonstrate a comprehension of content. There were some of those questions, but it was what I think bumped that up is I wasn't just giving questions and listening to a few students. Part of that was having, every question I asked, even at that comprehension level, was them working with a partner, talking to a partner with specific academic vocabulary that I wanted them to use. But this asking questions, made questions focus on comparing and contrasting information, to this where it talks about they fully explain and justify their thinking. No, I would say that's not where my students were. They were not fully explaining and justifying their thinking completely when they were responding.
And you know, I heard some that could, and which was pretty cool to listen to them explain their thinking. So what would it take to get all the students to that phase? Do you think it comes from the questioning? Do you think it comes from the structure of the responses? Where does that, what would be a way to push up so that you're well into development?
Right. I think those two things that you discussed, the structures, having, some varied structures that really push students into having that rich academic conversation where they really don't have a choice but to go there to those high levels. And then, I think just the types of questions, becoming more and more cognizant and intentional about the kinds of questions I'm asking. There's a place, I guess, for recall and